Hello, and welcome to your lesson for myfreeactingclass.com for Wednesday, March 3rd. My name is Michael Bean. I'm an acting teacher. I've been running an acting school in Vancouver, BC for the last 19 years. If we count the years I was teaching improv before that, then, just over 20 years of practice now. So I've been teaching film and TV acting for the last 19 years. And I run a kids and teens school called Biz Studio. And then you can find information about my adult classes at michaelbean.ca. There's also links to all of that on the My Free Acting Class website. So today I want to go over in some detail a resource that I have mentioned several times, but haven't actively gone through with you. So just walk you through sort of where to find it, because now that I'm looking at it, of course, for the lesson, as soon as I take on the eyes of somebody who doesn't know these things, I'm like, oh, I didn't make this as easy as I could have. So I also am going to clean this up as we go, or after the lesson rather. But when I first started teaching in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, one of the things that I did to get started was I wrote a book called Confidence on Camera. And it's gone through multiple iterations over the years. At this point, it started as like 100 and something pages, and I trimmed it down and trimmed it down and trimmed it down. And now I think it's 42 pages. And I, for a long time, had paper copies that I was just giving away at the studio. And then for the last maybe like 5 or 6 years, it's just existed in this PDF that is available completely for free. So I still stand by a lot of the information in this. It's been revised multiple times. The 4th edition, I'm going to show you where to find it, and then we're going to go over it and look at a couple of things in there together. And then any time that we have left for the remainder of the session, I am open to your questions. So hopefully you have good questions and you've got 10, 15 minutes to think about them. And if not, I'm going to be showing you this resource. And so hopefully there's something that makes you go, oh yeah, I do want to know more about that specific thing that he mentioned very briefly. So if we go to the, where are we? One moment. So if we go to the My Free Acting Class website, I'm going to take you there with me, and hopefully the internet behaves. And if you were to scroll down, obviously this is what takes you to the lesson. If you were to scroll down and find more free stuff, take me there. That would take you to the Confidence on Camera website, which is something that's basically just a placeholder that sort of links to these different projects, but I wanted to make them easy to find. And right down here in the bottom right corner, you'll see Confidence on Camera Handbook 4th edition, free ebook. So if you were to click on that, it would download this file, and that would take you directly to the handbook itself, which I believe I already have open for us. I do. So, Confidence on Camera, 4th edition, Michael B. There's the logo for the kids and teens school that I run. Let me see if I can make this a little bit bigger. I don't know if that makes a difference on your end, but hopefully it does. Confidence. I've run lessons on confidence before. They were some of the first lessons that I ran on the free acting class. You'd have to go way back into the video archive. But a feeling of self-assurance arising from one's appreciation of one's own abilities or qualities. I have lots of thoughts about what builds confidence, but still my top level is that it is the expectation of being successful that somebody carries with them. There's a number of casting director quotes here. My favorite quality to see in an audition: confidence, Laura Brooke. The actor's most important tool in an audition: confidence, Michelle Allen. Confidence, the first thing we see in your auditions, Candice Elsiga. Even then I was bringing in casting directors really regularly to do workshops, and confidence comes up over and over and over again. Down here you can see the introduction, or the index rather. They talk through the industry, this thing that I've gone over in class multiple times, which is, producers in charge of the money, directors in charge of the story, casting directors in charge of the auditions, talent agents in charge of marketing the actors, actors in charge of themselves. But that's the seed of that is right here, and each of those roles is laid out in some detail. the acting basics, enjoy yourself, honesty, commitment, body and voice. These are a lot about sort of setting yourself up as an actor so that you can be successful, and figuring out how you're going to put energy into those things. The camera technique, this is what we're going over in so much detail on Tuesday. Eyeline, mark, frame, slate. And then we get down into some of the specifics about reading carefully and imagining yourself on the part. Now, this 25-point audition checklist, we're not going to go over in detail today because the next revision of this book is going to include, separate, here is the in-person audition checklist, and here is the self-tape home audition checklist. The game has changed for film and TV auditions. And I think it will likely continue to be so for quite some time. Even with the possibility of in-person auditions, kind of completely opening up, as soon as the fall. So even with that on the horizon, I still think that a year and a half of this new system, that allows casting directors to work from home, that allows them to see more people and see more tapes. I just don't think we're going to see it completely change anytime soon. LA has 20 times as much film production as BC, 20 times as many actors. Most of the Screen Actors Guild's 100,000 members live in LA, compared to the 5,000 members of the Union of BC Performers. So you can find some of the details here that I've talked about in class before. And then there's I love this quote from actor George Burns, who died in 1996. He says, "Acting is all about honesty. If you can fake that, you've got it made." There's an ongoing debate, I think, about whether actors need to sort of really feel the feelings, or if they just need to tell the story. And sometimes that's framed as the sort of debate between the American school, like feel the feelings, and the English school, which is just make sure the audience thinks you're feeling the feelings, however you get there. And I just don't think that divide it makes sense for you to get caught up in. As long as you feel good about the work you're doing and it comes through cleanly, how you get there, mix and match, you borrow from all of them. And then there is, beautiful quote from the actress Meryl Streep, 15 Oscar nominations, 2 wins, 23 Golden Globe nominations, 6 wins. Acting is not about being someone different. It's finding the similarity in what is apparently different and finding myself in there. I really like Meryl Streep as an example, partly because her process speaks to me. If you go and listen to her talk, she will say quite openly, no, I don't have a definite, I don't always approach each role exactly the same way. That she really takes an artist's approach to the work and gets curious, engages deeply, allows it to change. There's a David Mamet quote down here that I highlighted for us because I want to show it to you, which is about uncertainty. This idea. So David Mamet is a playwright based out of New York, and wrote a number of very, very successful plays. Then went on to adapt some of them for films and write several films. He was the director of a sort of very influential theater company in New York that a lot of big actors came out of. If the actor opens his mouth on cue and speaks even though he feels uncertain, the audience have witnessed the true lost art of the actor. Now, David Mamet also wrote a book called, I believe, True and False, where there's another quote, in one of the sidebars earlier on in the book. There's no such thing as talent, only hard work, something like that. And David Mamet was famous as an director, for essentially trying to get his actors to just say the words. He's like, just show up, just say the words. But then if you sort of read some of the work some of the interviews with the people who were, you know, the highly skilled actors who came out of his theater company. You'll see them say, "Oh yeah, no," just like you sort of have to ignore half of what David says. You know, that if anybody remembers the lesson on the work of Ivana Chubbuck, and she's got this very detailed, whatever it is, 12-step process. The last step of which is to let go. You know, to basically, okay, now that you've done this preparation, now let go of the preparation, see the person in front of you, just say the words. You know, that piece of, if you just open your mouth on cue and speak, you know, if you let go of the work, you know, then it comes alive, you know, as alive as you can actually be present with the other person. I think that's really solid, and it's really useful. It's really meaningful, particularly if you have done the preparation. Right, it's a little bit like the kind of advice that I've heard given to classical musicians. You know, that assuming you've done all the preparation, you know, then when it comes time for the audition, then when it comes time for the performance, you know, then the necessity is to let go. Yeah, because otherwise there's so much focus on the details that the performance can be lost. You know, and I think that that's true of the film and TV work that we do. You know, that the way you know the preparation is right is when you are looking at that other person these days, you know, on Zoom, or I believe that I've talked about it here in these lessons before. When I'm taping my auditions, I use a site called weaudition.com. And if you go and check out that site, there are, I think it's like a monthly membership. It's $10 a month or something. But there are always readers, you know, there and available. You can just book yourself a reader. A lot of people are just reading for free, reading for tips. So it's like, okay, it's 3 a.m., but I want to practice my steam. Great. Probably there's somebody in the UK, who either who just got up, or is just about to go to bed. There are actors who are sort of there to get some practice themselves and work as readers and volunteer as readers from all over the world. Yeah, and I found it a really wonderful resource. So in that moment, can you just look at the person and connect? That's where the work is very alive. Questions to start with, so asking questions about the scene, imagining yourself in the part. This is, I think the origin of this quote is somewhat contested, but it's one of those ones that is so simple, so concise. It's really worth coming back to. Acting is the ability to live truthfully under imaginary circumstances. Acting is the ability to live truthfully under imaginary circumstances. It's often attributed to Sanford Meisner, who was one of the folks who came out of the group theater, along with Stella Adler and some Lee Strasberg, who founded the Actors Studio in LA and New York. So the group theater, very influential, and Sanford Meisner was very into helping people be present. The Meisner work, many of the exercises involve repetition, people repeating things back to each other as a way of basically shaking them out of rote routine. As simple as just saying a line back and forth to each other. Imagine yourself in the part. 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 Or sometimes noticing physical behavior and mirroring that. Oh, you're smiling. Your eyebrows did the thing. My eyebrows did the thing. Now you're smiling. Oh, you're smiling. Never tried Meisner work while looking at my own video. It's uniquely narcissistic feeling. The learn your lines. There's a memorization technique in here. The 25-point audition checklist. Details. So that's the resource that I wanted to share today. Again, it's the Confidence on Camera Handbook. It is a completely free resource that you can find simply by going here to the myfreeactingclass.com website and clicking here on more free stuff. It's right down here in the corner. click on this free ebook. Boom, no strings attached. This will take you to the archive of all the videos from acting class. This will take you to my adult classes. This will take you to the kids and teens classes, and this will take you right back to my free acting class. So there's my 20 minutes for today, and the rest of our time is available for questions. So what is on your acting minds, or is there anything that I have mentioned that you're like, oh, I want to hear Michael Bean talk more about that thing? Hey, Christina, like, love the red. It's a great color on you. See you poking your screen, Claudine. Does that mean you have a question?
I was just looking to see who's there.
Yes.
I was going to ask any questions. I can't think of any at the moment.
Christina, what about you? What are you working on? What might be useful for me to talk about?
I don't know, lately, I think you've really explained everything on these months. I think there's a little more questions, but I can't think of them right now. When I have questions, I'm actually gonna write it down, because I have questions sometimes and I forget about it. When I come on the acting classes, I'm like, what was I thinking about? But I'm gonna write it down.
And I sure don't mind being asked a question, a second and a third and a fourth time. I think that what you'll find as an actor, like, let's say you were to keep doing this for the next decade, what you'll find is that none of it's rocket science. It just takes so much time to make its way from here to here, that sometimes you need to ask the same question to half a dozen different teachers, or you just need to sort of hear it at different times in your life, or different years, and then at some point somebody will say one of these sort of acting things, like acting is being truthful under imaginary circumstances, and they'll say it in a different way or with a different level of conviction, and suddenly it'll hit you here and you'll be like, oh my God, I get it. How could I not get it before? And that's when you're going to want to go to all of your acting friends and say, guys, acting is just being truthful under imaginary circumstances. And they'll look at you like, yeah, right, like, of course, because it's here. But it's wild. So many of the things that I have learned as an actor that have been genuinely influential it's been something that I had been intellectually aware of for a very long time, but hadn't been able to internalize. In the world of learning theory, I've heard it called emergent learning. It's the idea that, like you learn it, and then it's in the process of forgetting that some of it internalizes, because what we want is to be able to get up in front of camera and do it, without thinking, okay, and now I'm looking at the eye lines and now I'm going to make the faces. Did you have a question that came up for you there, Christina? I didn't mean to cut you off.
So I do have a question. Okay, so my problem is when I do sad scenes, I can get into it. I don't really act sad, but it's easier to act sad than it is for me to act happy or angry. When I'm angry, I'm like, how can you do this? But it sounds really too aggressive, or it sounds a bit doesn't sound realistic. And when I'm happy, it sounds too happy. But it's not when I act happy or angry, it's it's overdoing it. I overdo it instead of underdoing it.
Can I play with you for a minute? Okay. So you said the sad scenes, are easy to connect to, and I've seen that in your quick exercises. So how could you do this? That's your line. Great. We'll work with that. So if being angry is not something that comes easily to you, then one of the access points, that I'm going to offer, not in a facetious way, but truly, is that as a young person, if you have not exposed yourself, to anti-oppression work, there are lots of social and cultural issues about which you could get very angry. If you're like, but I don't want to be angry in my life, great. Like, good. Don't be angry at your dog. Don't be angry with your family. Go out and be angry at patriarchy and racial inequality, because they can take it. They've been around for a long time. Like, they could use some smashing, so I would say seek out things that genuinely give you that sense of like, whoa, that is not right. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then in yourself, if you think of it not as like, if you think of it not as violent, right? So I think one of the places where anger gets confusing for people is that it gets conflated. That's a fancy word that means like people think it's the same thing. Anger gets conflated for violence. And so people say, oh, I don't get angry. And what they really mean is I don't get violent. Good. That's great. I think not being violent is a great idea. We don't want any more violence in the world. However, anger is just an absolutely basic human emotion that even babies feel, and 100% guaranteed your body is capable of it and feels it on a regular basis. Now, you might be suppressing it, shutting it down, ignoring it. You might be so used to ignoring it, that it's just this like little like beep. And you're just like, oh, I don't know. No, I don't feel that. It's nothing. Or you call it something else. You're like, I'm just kind of irritated, or I'm kind of annoyed. Or it's like, yeah, those are all flavors of angry. Like your body is capable of it. Right. So, right. So like, and yeah, like maybe you probably don't get enraged, and, we could say that that's either like a consequence of your like emotional well-being and like the way in dealing with the world and your privilege, like probably both, right? But that doesn't mean you don't feel it. It just means that you like your life isn't taking you all the way to enraged. Right. And if you want to get enraged, just go read about the historic oppression of women, and then you'll be fine. You'll be like, oh, that's enraging. Go smash, smash. Probably just throwing that out there. Right. And so let's pick something that's closer to home. If you don't usually get that like anger protective feeling of yourself, then who would you feel protective of? Would it be like a parent, or would it be your best friend, or would it be your dog? Or would it be a little kid, like somebody who you actually would be like, hey, don't like push them around, like that's not that's not cool. Like
I think it'd be like first it'd be my brother or one of my friends, because
right.
once I got really irritated because one girl was like saying, oh, you guys can't do this to like me and my friends, and I'm like, you can't just say something like that, it's like not right. And then, like once my brother
good yeah, excellent. So that like it's not right feeling, right? You look at me, just like breathe into it, say it's not right, like you've come, you're not acting, you're just remembering that, like, yeah, you felt that before. So say it's not right.
It's not right.
Good. Now say the line that you chose for yourself, which is, how could you do that?
How could you do that?
Good. But say but right now it's getting this like, but now look at me, say it's not right.
It's not right.
Good. Now say, how could you do that?
How could you do that?
Do you understand? Yeah. And maybe that doesn't you don't think of that as angry because it is not violent, but it is, but anger does a lot of things for us. And mostly it is the thing, that sets boundaries, that protects us and other people, that says something is happening and you need it to change, so you can look at your life and go, okay, annoyed, irritated, like those are present. You with me so far?
Yeah, that makes, I would do that, like those lines where you say it's like not right, and then you use the actual line into it.
Yeah, right. Whereas if you think about how you should say it, yeah, you're going to psych yourself out and you're going to end up making faces and it's going to be weird. Generally speaking, whereas if you put it into your own words and you're like, oh yeah, wait, I know this feeling. I can take myself into that. I just have to remember that girl who was talking to my friends. She's never going to watch this, lesson, so you're fine.
I'm fine. Yes.
Right, and then that big smile that you had a second ago, right? Like where I was, good. Now just say, how could you do that? But say it with that feeling, just from there.
How could you do that?
See?
I feel like I did fakely though. Like, does it seem realistic, or is that like? I feel like I did.
Yeah, and it seemed realistic it's just that you felt fake. And so that's here. And so here's the distinction, is that it is possible, entirely possible for you to feel uncomfortable. Remember the David Mamet quote that I showed you?
Oh
You know,
yeah.
right? If the actor opens up his mouth and just speaks, even though he feels uncertain, that's when we're seeing the art of acting, right? Of course, as a person, we always want to reduce our vulnerability. We want to reduce our uncertainty. We're like, oh no, like if I was doing it right, I wouldn't feel uncertain. And that's not how art works. That's not how
Oh,
feelings work. That's just not how it works.
oh, that
Yeah.
makes so much more sense. That makes more sense.
Well, and you're gonna forget. Like and I hope you ask again, and I get the chance to tell you again. And then at some point you find yourself just telling somebody else, like, well, yeah, of course. Like, here's how it works. And they're like, whoa. You're I'm not forgetting anymore. Like, I've got it here. Uh, Candy, did you have a question? I saw you turn your video on for a second, and if you want to jump in with a question, yeah, please feel free. I'm okay staying a couple of minutes over. I can see that you're at work. This is so great. We've got Christina, who's must come here after school. Claudine, who's stayed up late after her kids went to bed, so she can watch in the UK. And Candy, who's listening to us while she's at work. It makes me happy.
Hello. Sorry, I kind of got to be quick because I'm still working, but I thank you for sharing everything that you've shared. Great, like self-tape, and then Christina, good job. Also, my question really fast is, so when I've been doing self-tapes, I feel like my first ones are usually better than as I keep going. And then you said there's like a point where you improve past that at some point, and I'd like to get there, but I don't know what that looks like or how. So, and it's okay if this can't be answered this time, because I can't really like participate much. I'm just
Yeah.
listening to your answer. So,
Of course. Yeah. So my advice in terms of addressing that thing where the first takes are better, is take breaks. At the beginning, take breaks. I think that fatigue, and decision fatigue, and attention fatigue are real things. And one of the things that happens when you first approach the work, each time, is that you're thinking about it less. And on your second or third or fourth or fifth take, some part of you is going to be like, oh yeah, well, but I did it and I watched it and I just want to change this one thing. And we're going to see mostly the result you are trying to achieve. And so if you feel your work getting like stiffer and stiffer, then that is then one of the ways outside of that is just take breaks. The other thing that I've been playing with recently is just like even a really short pause, just like, okay, I'm going to take 20 seconds and I'm going to do a couple of tuck jumps. I'm going to like really jump up high, not because I don't want to be out of breath, but I want my heart going. And then I'm going to take that into the scene, because then I've got more sparkle and I've got more energy and I can't think about as much. I just got to look at Christina and say the lines. That often that will bring it back to life. Now, when I'm coaching a client who's doing a taped audition, if I'm worried that that's going to happen, that they're going to sort of get into trying to please and perfect and perform and kind of make it perfect, then what I'll do is I'll say, okay, Christina, you've got this big audition that you've got to do. So what we're going to do is we're going to rehearse just the lines. Like, we're not going to act it. And if Christina starts rehearsing the lines like, how could you do that? No, remember, we're not doing that. We're just running the words, and we'll run the words until she just got them down. And then I'll say, okay, now we're going to add the action, but we're still going to just do it, just facts. And then you practice with like eye lines and action, but still just facts, because you're rehearsing into your body all the things that you might have to think about that are going to pull you out of it. And then only when you've got all of those things in place, then I'll be like, cool, okay, you got the eye lines, you got the action, you're turning in there, you're picking up the thing, you're handing the thing to the person, where you're looking. Now that you got all of that, all the stuff that's going to pull you out and into your brain, and you've just drilled it in your body, now we get to do the fun thing and just run it for real. So now jump up and down a couple of times, and just come into it and attack it. And the reason I do that with taped auditions is because often those takes end up being the best ones. But I've just had too many times as a coach where we did that first take. There was something kind of technically imperfect about the first take. We spent 45 minutes trying to get a version of it that was like as alive, but corrected the technical thing. And then we ended up going like, you know what? We're just gonna use that first take, aren't we? Yeah, I guess we are. Because like you say, Candy, it's the most, it can be the most alive. So that's my long answer to your short question, which is, take breaks, get your heart rate up, drill the technical things before you start running, so then you have more freedom to play. Yeah, and then what you will find is that with time, with practice, right? Like if we had like a very experienced actor who was here in part of the lesson, who I could say, who I could use for an example over and over again, and you would find that they would have their own internal strategies for like, okay, I'm getting frustrated or I'm getting stiff, and then you just see them go, okay, and sometimes it would just take that, right? But that's like, the after you've done it many, many, many times, then you can shorten it and shorten it and shorten it and shorten it. But that's true of any habit, of any process. That initially it might take a 10-minute walk, and then cut to several years later, or several hundred times practicing later, which you could do a lot faster if you were just like really, really wanted to. But no pressure, because acting is supposed to be fun, right? And that when you've internalized that skill, it can get to the point where like, just a second, okay. And I think that it's useful to have access to that when you're on set, and they are running, like a 15-hour day, and there is some technical thing that's messing up the shot, and they're having to tape it over and over and over again. That does happen sometimes, and you'll see actors, get frustrated and get flat, and sometimes they just have to accept that, and they'll come back and do the voices again in ADR, additional dialogue recording, later. But stick around long enough, and you'll see that there's a whole bunch of different strategies that people have access to, or that people try. So I hope that's some helpful, and I look forward to seeing what happens with your tape next time. Candy, specifically, because the last, I think 4 or 5 tapes you've been actually trying to recreate something that you have seen. One of my hopes is that when we remove that pressure, which like you would never have in a real audition, you would never have here's the thing I'm trying to recreate, that maybe that will open up some space for more exploration, which is why I suggested the exercise of, for your next scene, taking something from that's written, and not something that where you are can be influenced by the performance somebody else did. Whew, that's a lot of ground for half an hour. Thanks for joining me, folks. I will be back on Tuesday, and I'm gonna get caught up in posting these to YouTube right now. So Christina, if you're like, wait, what was the answer to that question? Then by tomorrow you should be able to go on YouTube and just like scan forward to the part where you're like, la, 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 and you can see your mouth moving. You're like, yes, I'm just gonna listen to it all over again. All right. I appreciate your
Thank
time,
you.
and I'll see you next week. Ciao.
Bye.